Okay, I want to do a quick video, hopefully, on a few different ideas, just to get them introduced, so that we can start thinking about them, and we will do some additional things at a later date. And these ideas are velocity and automation of panning and volume in Pro Tools first. Velocity is a MIDI parameter, and it's essentially how hard the musician would hit his or her instrument or the note. How hard you hit the key on a piano, and subsequently how hard the hammer in the piano hits the string. How hard you hit a snare drum. Is it t or is it ta? The bass could be two, whatever. Velocity relates to all instruments in MIDI. And it's not only an increase in volume, which it is, but it's also can affect the timbre of an instrument, the quality of what that sounds like. Is that snare drum sound like a smack or a crack? Again, that hammer hitting the piano string, are you going to hear more attack of the hammer if you hit that instrument harder? And then automation, again, panning being where a sound sits in the stereo field. Is it far to the left, somewhat to the left, right in the center, same on the right? And volume, how loud is it? And with automation, we can do creative things like move a sound from left to right, on beat, and kind of creatively to make a cool sound and a cool effect. Or we can use volume in the same way, create a fading effect. Or we can use it more technically to lower the sound of something when we want to draw attention to another sound. If there's two instruments playing, and one is going to become more prevalent for any reason, whether it's a vocal or something else, we might duck, bring down another sound, and we can do that through automation. Right now, we're just going to learn how to do it. So in Pro Tools, what I'd like you to do, just create a burner project session and make one mono instrument track. So when you go up to track, leave one as mono, create another one, make that one stereo, make sure they're both instruments, and I named mine mono piano and stereo piano. I inserted expand, and for both of them, I went to the acoustic piano category, and I chose the soft grand piano. In all reality, you can use just about any sound. For this exercise, go ahead and keep it simple and make it easier for me. Maybe that's not what you want. Okay. So very quickly, I'm just going to open up the MIDI editor, and I am going to change my tempo. So I'm turning off my conductor so that I can just quickly create one static tempo. I'll take my pencil, and I'm just going to draw out, these are quarter notes, so from beat 1 of measure 1 to beat 2. So these are all just quarter notes on middle C, C3. And if you're following along exactly, go ahead and do that. And every time I insert a note, you can see that one of these lines with a diamond on top shows up. The one that is the note that's highlighted, you can see that that diamond is white. I'm going to get rid of the pencil now, and really what I want to use is the grabber tool. I'm always used to using the smart tool, so I'm just going to use that. You can see that when I click on this velocity indicator, and that's what it says it is, it shows up at 80. So when you simply draw a note, all your notes will come in at 80 velocity. And you have a range up to 127. And that goes for all instruments, because remember, MIDI is not a sound, it's a series of communications. So I'm going to go ahead and make this first one 127, and I'm going to make the second one 100. And you can hear how they start to sound different. Okay, so 127 and 100. Every other one. 127 and 100. Okay? So also notice that the color of the notes changes. The higher the velocity, the darker, the lighter, The lower the velocity, the lighter the note. And you can do this in a whole bunch of different ways. I could select, using my shift key, I can select just the notes that I want to lower, so I don't have to do them all at once. Yeah. Okay, so now I have two different velocities, or changing velocities from note to note. Okay, and it is not just volume. Clearly it is volume, but it's more than that as well. It's more apparent with some snare drums. And that's velocity. Human musicians play with varying velocities. Even this is still semi-robotic. There are functions where you can randomize velocity, or you need to kind of think about it and kind of make it how you want. You want to accent a particular note in a chord, for example. But in any case, this gives you the ability to kind of think about what velocity means and how you can adjust the velocity of certain instruments. Using the same automation lane, essentially, if you click on the word velocity, so now we're going to move on to this panning idea. If you move on, you see that there's a whole bunch of different parameters that you can adjust. MIDI volume and MIDI mute and MIDI panning are not what we want to use. We want to use audio panning. And you can play around with other things like pitch bend. You have your mod wheel and stuff like that, and even sustain kind of foot controllers. But for panning, if you click panning, you're going to see a line down the center of your automation lane. Again, this whole kind of area is called the automation lane. And if I were to use my grabber tool, click at the quarter note spot here, I have just moved the sound from the center all the way hard left. You can see the L here and an R here. I'm actually going to pull this down so it goes all the way from my right ear to my left ear. And then each quarter note, I'm going to kind of draw or pull down a triangle so that with each velocity shift, I'm also moving the sound across my ears. Now, this is not an interesting sound as much as it is a functional way to show and listen. In all honesty, that feels a little bit, well, it's annoying and it's heavy-handed. But let's see if I change this to go kind of longer. Okay, so every harder hit, louder velocity is accentuated in one ear, and then the sound moves along. Okay, so that's automated panning. Great. Automated volume would be something along the lines of, I'm going to actually have you highlight this with your grabber and hit Command D or Control D. And what we will do is learn how to delete our automation. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and select from measure 3 through measure 4 to measure 5. And I'm going to readjust this because that is not what I wanted to happen. I'm just going to bring this back to the center. Okay. And now I'm going to change my lane to be audio volume. And I'm going to put, these are called anchor points, by the way, when you put in these dots that kind of indicate a shift. And that can be a shift in panning, it can be a shift in volume. And what I'd like you to do is simply raise up. Now what I don't want you to do is go all the way up to plus 12, okay? You can see that indicator. That's just going to make it super loud. Just get to 0 again. Remember, 0 is not off, negative infinity is off. So this one's going to sound like this. Okay? And what's cool about this, or what I think is another cool element, is when you look at the mix window, remember mix, you're going to see at the beginning, you're going to see the panning knob move according to the panning changes that we put in. And then you'll see the volume changes in the fader as it gets into the third and fourth measures. All right, so that is in no way a creative use, but it is how you do it. What I'd also like you to do is to copy this first clip, and you can do that just by highlighting it and copy, so Command C or Control C, and let's use our Smart tool and paste it right at the beginning, and I'll just duplicate it so I have two of them. So I'm looking at this, and it copied all of this information, which I actually don't want this panning. Well, I do, but I don't, because I want to explain something about it. And I kind of hoped it didn't copy that, but it did. Okay, so I still have all the velocity information, so you can see, and you can have multiple lanes available, but it does make it a little harder to see. So just looking at the panning, let's make this bigger. Can you not? How do you do this in this darned program? All right, doesn't matter. You have, with a stereo track in Pro Tools, you have two panning knobs, and this is the only thing I'm going to point out for this, is that you do need to treat it as though if you wanted to make something move across your ears, you need to treat it somewhat differently. And you need to actually start both of these knobs over on one side in order to then make it move and have that effect. So this will get the same exact effect, but you're literally moving both of those in conjunction. Otherwise, it wouldn't give you that effect. Okay, so just a very quick introduction to the concept of velocity and automated panning and automated volume. Please, I want you to highlight, for this first track primarily, because it's where I had you do everything, I want you to highlight these two clips, go to Export, export them as MP3s, interleaved. Everything else is okay, and hit OK, and please submit that to Canvas.